Hello and welcome to the Bald and Bloviating podcast. I am your bald host, Mookie Spitz, and today I am bloviating with Mr. Vince Parry. Mr. Parry has some strong opinions about our tumultuous current events, and mine don't always align with his, so I thought we would get on the pod and have a robust conversation centered around some of the pyrotechnics we both witnessed recently in the Oval Office, where Vladimir Zelensky arrived, president of Ukraine, to ostensibly sign the minerals deal between Ukraine and the United States, to ostensibly begin the process and hopefully precipitate the peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. Things didn't quite work out that way. What's your take on
Well, first
the
of all, thanks for
tumultuous?
having me on. I really appreciate it. and uh, I'm well aware of your position, so I'm just going to go. And of course, you're going to, you know, you're going to fight back. In any case, so I watched it live, and it was astonishing to me. It's the same feeling I have when I watched January 6th unfold live on TV, in the sense that it seemed unreal almost. You have the Oval Office setting and all the heritage and all the respect and all the protocols and everything like that. And all of a sudden, Zelensky is basically recounting, the history of the conflicts between Russia and Ukraine, and how Putin broke the treaty and all that kind of stuff. And you know, all of a sudden, Vance pounced on him, you know, accusing him of, relitigating things or whatever. I guess he was just, there to, to say, let's get this over with. You kowtow and sign the deal, and we'll be all done or whatever. It's no secret that neither Putin nor Vance are particularly fond of Zelensky. So my feeling is that I know there's a big debate on Capitol Hill about was it a trap, was it planned, or was it spontaneous? I'm not going to conjecture about that, but what it seemed to me was Vance and Trump ganged up, on Zelensky and essentially shouted over him, did not respect him. Here's a guy, he's fighting for his life and the life of his country, and they're focused on the mineral deal. It seems like, the transactional aspect of it was what they were there for, rather than the ideological components of democracy versus, autocracy. And I just think that the language, the posture, the attitude was very, very unpresidential. I feel Trump disgraced the office, and basically embarrassed himself, and by association our country, and beat up on a guy who's hat in hand coming here. So that's a general take that I have. What about you?
I'm on the exact opposite side of that looking glass. And if we could step back just a couple seconds and contextualize our framework, both you and I voted for Biden and then
Yes,
Harris. So
yes.
you and I are almost lifelong Democrat voters.
I'm a registered Democrat. Yes.
Okay. So I just want the listeners to be clear that this isn't a raging debate between an entrenched Trump supporter and someone who isn't, crystallized in this event. This is someone who voted against Trump, debating with someone who voted against Trump within the context of today's unfolding events. So I think that that's an important context to look at this through.
Agreed. Yeah, thanks. Agreed.
So my take on it as a Democrat, albeit I do have some libertarian persuasions, some would call them perversions, but in a pragmatic sense, we live in a binary political system. So when it comes down to brass tacks, I will vote Democrat, and I have had a Trump allergy going all the way back to high school when I read The Art of the Deal. I always thought Trump was a reprehensible, vile human being. And I
Hmm.
think that that is also very important contextually to frame up at least my point of view.
Okay.
So given all of that, I saw what you saw, but my take on this is very, very different. Let's start with Zelensky's behavior.
Hmm.
Because based on your overview of this event, you're tacitly assuming Zelensky was once again the helpless victim pounced by Vance and Trump. I see Zelensky coming in with an attitude. I see Zelensky showing up in a way that displayed defiance and confrontation instead of deference and, frankly, gratitude. I see an exchange which rapidly accelerated, which Zelensky fueled further into his own oblivion. And I see many of the characteristics that I can't help but agree with Trump and Vance's point of view about. So, just to be specific, when the conversation was ignited with the Vance interjection, Zelensky took the bait. He argued, he negotiated to Trump's own point, to Vance's own point in front of the cameras. He was bringing up nuances of security demands in real time in the Oval Office in front of the press. Zelensky was brought to the White House with one purpose and one goal. That was to sign the minerals deal, which was, in a sense, a setup for the ensuing peace negotiations. That was a prerequisite that everyone had agreed upon. It was absolutely cut and dry what this meeting was all about. And by throwing in these other provisos and throwing fuel on the fire, I blame Zelensky for what happened because he should have known better. He knows what Trump is like. He was obviously privy to the conflicted and difficult and awkward relationship that the two men shared going all the way back to Trump's impeachment, which was precipitated by his conversation with Trump, that perfect
Hmm.
phone call.
Hmm.
And it's been an ongoing saga between the two men. So when you're representing the country of Ukraine, when you clearly, and again to Trump's point, don't have the cards, you know what you're getting yourself into. You know what your goals are. So you chew with your mouth closed and you behave. And instead, as I mentioned, he showed defiance. He was pushing back. He was talking over both Vance and Trump. And he wasn't acting as a guest should act. And now you could say that his country is under war. He's endured tremendous hardship. He's a national hero when Trump was someone who was a draft dodger and had bone spurs. Yeah, all that's true, but I'm just being realistic about the situation from a strategic point of view. I think Zelensky played it very, very badly, and Trump and Vance took advantage of his weakness and doubled and tripled down on it. I don't think necessarily that this was premeditated. I think that both Trump and Vance took advantage of Zelensky showing a tremendous amount of weakness and lack of self-control.
Okay, well, you've given me a lot to think about, and I want to unpack a little bit of what you said, okay? Let's start with Zelensky as an antagonist or an aggressor, or what was the word you used? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I think he was he is needlessly
Confrontational. Yeah,
confrontational and combative.
right. So, a couple of things. Um, you're right that Trump and Vance saw the purpose of the meeting as signing the mineral deal. What I disagree with you about is that there's another issue that what does Zelensky get out of it? He wants security for his country in exchange for the billions of dollars that, he's going to sign over. Trump has made it very clear he won't commit in writing or anything. He's giving him a verbal thing, hey, don't worry, yeah, sure, we'll take care of you or whatever. I think Zelensky isn't satisfied with that. And he came to the Oval Office with a different expectation, which again could explain, the confrontation. I think he came with the idea of, okay, I'll sign this deal, but I want you to commit, all right? Not just give me a, hey, we'll see or whatever. Commit to protecting us, okay? Now, that's, I think so. Number one, I think they had different expectations. Yeah, the published one was that he's going to sign the mineral deal without a doubt. Uh, but I think there's an unspoken agenda that Zelensky had, and that sounds like you agree as well. But um, a couple of things. Um, what he was saying. And let's unpack this bit a little bit. I heard what he was saying was, Trump spreads a lot of misinformation and disinformation. Ukraine started the war. Zelensky's a dictator. Blah blah blah. I mean, that's his heritage. That's his brand, as we would say. Um, and I think Zelensky started out, at least what I remember, was he started out basically correcting, if you will, Trump, right, on the facts. You know, he wasn't the aggressor in the war. Um, Putin won't keep his word because, you say Putin will keep his word. He's not going to keep his word. He never has. He broke the treaty, with Ukraine. Um, he has demonstrated, with Crimea beforehand, that he has no problem walking in and seizing territory, his manifest destiny, idea for Russia. Um, so what I saw was Zelensky was just trying to get on the same plane with Trump in the sense that, hey, let's set the facts straight before we're going to have a talk about this. What did you hear?
I heard the same thing, but it begs the question of my judgment concerning Zelensky's behavior. That is not something that you negotiate or litigate or even discuss in front of 2 billion people. When the reporters are packed into the Oval Office, and the Oval Office is cramped, it's small, it's musty. It was musky just the other day, but it's a small little shitty space. And if you see some of the press photos of the event, they are packed in there with the boom microphones and
Yeah.
cameras. It is a public display of air quote legacy media grandeur. You are performing in this moment,
Absolutely, yeah.
and you are demonstrating the power structure. And the power structure is you are the leader of Ukraine flying into Washington to sign a deal with the president of the United States who has invited you into his home. Now, everything you're saying is ostensibly correct. Trump lied about the origins of the war. He falsely accused Zelensky of being a dictator. That's the context going into this meeting. Zelensky was factually correct that Putin cannot be trusted. Zelensky has reason to be concerned that signing the mineral deal will not precipitate any kind of security arrangement. Everything you say and what Zelensky said was patently true, but that has nothing to do with the dynamic of the setting in the Oval Office. Nothing. Zero. You are the guest of the president. He might say a few things that'll irk you, that'll poke you, that'll pinch you. I believe Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio, who both said that they coached Zelensky before going into this meeting,
Right.
which is essentially shut the fuck up and chew with your mouth closed. They told him not to take the bait. They are on his side. Both Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio, despite their yoga position asshole spelunking of Donald Trump, are old school Republicans. They are pro Ukraine and they don't like Russia, despite the recent pivot. So they were on Zelensky's side. They told him to behave because they knew what might happen. And what happened is exactly what everyone feared, which is Zelensky got triggered, his pride got in the way, and he felt he had to hashtag represent for his people when his actions did the exact opposite, short circuited the mineral deal, torpedoed the US Ukrainian relationship, and basically put him at a marked disadvantage moving forward. I blame Zelensky. Now, we can go on and on about Trump, and as I set it up contextually, you and I hate Trump. We're both New Yorkers. You're a born and bred New Yorker. I lived there long enough to know that Trump is a hustler, con man, piece of garbage. Okay? I will just say that. However, as will also become evident in this podcast, I believe he has a coherent strategy and he knows exactly what he's doing. And there are many aspects of that strategy that I can't help but be intrigued by and to a certain extent agree with. So I would love to, expand the conversation in those directions, but again, I disagree with your assessment that Zelensky came in as the victim and was victimized. I felt that he was foolish and he made some strategic blunders that have put him and his country at a marked disadvantage going forward.
Okay, so let me say two things about what you just said, and I think you accurately captured, what I was saying. Saw it from a different way though, but thank you for that. Um, Two things. Number one, the sanctity of the Oval Office. Okay, that's basically something you said where that's the context, that's the venue. All right. I think that Trump, more than anybody, more than Zelensky and anybody, has not respected the sanctity of the Oval Office. I go on, I watch TV, I turn on CNN or whatever bullshit is on the tube, and I see Elon Musk with his kids, right? Dressed in the same outfit as Zelensky, except he didn't have a sport jacket. Um, basically using the Oval Office, as his own private, parlor. Hey, look what we're doing. I got this guy over here. I'm going to let him talk. I think that he has soiled the office more than anyone else. So if I do see your point and say, well, Zelensky disrespected the venue of the Oval Office and the heritage of it, my point is that, hey, the office has already been soiled, okay, by Trump. So that's the one thing. The second thing is, I think that Zelensky. Um, well, now I lost my train. What was the second thing? The second thing was, oh, let's say I pissed you off, just like Zelensky pissed off Trump and Vance, right? You have a couple of ways of responding. All right. You can respond like, "Hey, Vince, all right, I see your point, but we're talking about different directions here, and I like to bring it back to this topic. Okay, blah blah blah." That's a diplomatic, courteous, professional way of handling it. My point is that Trump had a choice about how he could react to Zelensky. If Zelensky, as you say, was the aggressor, was the offensive party, etc., well, Trump didn't have to do what he did. All right, he basically went into, you know, a beatdown. All right, he and Vance double teamed him. Right, that's not the only way to respond. So I think if one party, all right, offends the other party's response, all right, they have free will, they can do whatever they want. I think Trump and Vance's response was unpresidential, okay, and basically an overdetermined, action against Zelensky. So I'm going to stop there, and and I don't know if you want to comment on it or move on or whatever.
Yeah, no, these 2 points I'll address specifically. So, your first point is that if anyone was disgracing the Oval Office and the presidency and American tradition and value and the institution of the United States of America, that was Trump. It wasn't Zelensky. And my response to that is we can go into that with my response to the second part of this. But Zelensky was insulting the Donald specifically. He was talking over Trump. When Trump was speaking, Zelensky kept talking, and he was just poking that big old bear. So let me qualify that it wasn't just disgracing the Oval Office in this capacity, but it was personally insulting the President of the United States, thereby triggering the hell out of him and his vice presidential henchmen. So I just
Yeah,
want
but
to qualify.
he has more
I
than one way to react.
right,
He could have
right.
done it more diplomatically.
Okay,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, and now I think you're missing the broader strategy, which is something that people have called the Trump Doctrine, which I think now is the perfect time to segue into.
Hmm.
When I mentioned that both Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio explicitly advised Zelensky not to quote unquote take the bait. That's another way of saying is, buddy, if you go in there with an attitude and if you trigger these two, they are going hell's bells to take advantage of that situation because their agenda is not your agenda. And
Hmm.
frankly, their agenda isn't the agenda that we would recommend either. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. So let me describe in as succinct a way as possible the Trump doctrine and show you how their behavior in the Oval Office was 100% on strategy, on point. It was deliberative. It wasn't necessarily premeditated, but they were waiting for an opening and they took it. And what you see is disrespect and what you see is lack of self control is a precisely aligned and executed strategy, which is a pivot into an entirely new direction for the country and for the world through their lens. Ready?
Yeah.
And that pivot is this. What does make America great again really mean outside the platitude of that statement? Now, many folks on the left have interpreted that as an insult and even a racist slant, that we should go back to the good old days of slavery, of Teddy Roosevelt, right?
Yeah.
The Chinese building the railroads. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation of Make America Great Again is over the last 5, 10, 15 years, we have lost our edge. If you look at China's economy in terms of its relative value, its currency, its exports, its industry, and its technology, back in 2001, when we let them into the World Trade Organization, the United States, based on these metrics, were double what China was. Fast forward to 2025, and now they are double ours from that same standard. China is starting, despite their speed bumps, of which there are many, they are kicking our ass. Militarily, they are building strength and influence. So, the good old days of America being the number one military power without question, the number one economic power without question, those days are over. That's point number one. Point number two, our deficit is at $36,000 billion. $36 trillion is what our deficit is at. In 2024, last year was the first year that the interest payments on our deficit is exceeding our expenditure on our military. It's over $850 billion, just the interest on the loans for our deficit. So the good old days are gone. And unless we change our direction, unless we start to pivot, we're going to end up in an existential financial and global crisis. Last point on this: Ukraine, Russia, NATO, and the EU. If we continue the trajectory of what we've been doing, we have been disproportionately supporting NATO and the EU. We have been their umbrella, their protector since World War II. Why? That's number one. Number two, there's no way that we could sustain a multi-front war. If war breaks out in Europe, in the Middle East, in the Far East, there's no way that we could respond to these threats. So here's the Trump calculus. This is the Trump doctrine that's already been articulated. Maybe not well enough for people to really start to understand it, but if you're paying attention, this is what it seems to be. The Trump doctrine is aligning ourselves with Europe has very little strategic global benefit. The real nemesis is China. Russia is essentially a gigantic gas station, but they're the number one nuclear power and they wield disproportionate influence compared to their GDP. We are wasting our time defending Ukraine. We are wasting our time defending the Palestinians. The real enemies are China and Iran. War with Iran is likely coming. So, what is in the U.S.'s best interest? How do we make America great again? We sick Elon Musk on the federal government, Doge, to cut the expenses to reduce that deficit if we can, at least in principle. And regarding our foreign policy, we throw Ukraine and the Palestinians under the bus because we're allied with Israel. They have a pact with Saudi Arabia and the UAE. We're looking at the big picture, the big global players. We don't have time for Ukraine. We don't have time for Gaza. Screw the little guy. I'm going to go fist pump with Vlad to create a renormalized relationship with Russia. I'm going to do détente with the Chinese. I don't care about the Uyghur concentration camps. And I might have to throw Taiwan under the bus too. And if I have to do these things, that's just tough shit because I want to make America great again, reduce the deficit, keep strategic advantage, stop paying for the Europeans and NATO. Especially useless if I'm fist pumping with Vladimir. What's the goddamn point? I'm going to save money. And at the same time, I'm going to hit it where it counts. I'm going to reclaim the Panama Canal. I'm going to take Greenland. And it's just like Teddy Roosevelt all over again. I'm going to make America great again because we've really been losing the last 5, 10 years. That is the Trump doctrine in a nutshell. So let me cap the experience that we witnessed in the Oval Office. This mofo is showing up in army fatigues. Where's his suit and tie? Number one. Number two, shut the fuck up. You have no power here because I'm already eager to throw your ass under the bus. We've given you $100 billion for a meat grinder war. It was a war of attrition. Mookie Spitz on Medium predicted that this would be stalemate back in 2022. It didn't take rocket science to figure out that we've been waging a proxy war against the nuclear power to no effect. So shut the fuck up. Give us your minerals, and if I feel like it, we're going to give you security guarantees. And if nothing else, Europe needs to step up because we're over it.
Wow. So
So how's
okay,
that? I know that was a mouthful, but I've
a
been thinking.
mouthful. That's several mouthfuls.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for a while, and
Apparently,
I've been
apparently.
ranting about it. But to me, this seems like a coherent strategy, and it explains the pivot that we're all experiencing. Everyone is shocked, like, oh my God, he's shitting on France and Britain and he's kissing up to Vlad. What about those hookers and the P tape and Trump Hotel Moscow? I think this goes beyond that. It is a realpolitik worldview where literally America, if you look at it in terms of brass tacks, realities and facts, we're losing our edge. We're slipping, and we can't be doing the shit that we've been doing since World War II, which is namely starting pointless, destructive wars, supporting other countries, USAID. Why the fuck are we building tents in Africa? We don't have the money. We're borrowing money to what? Save Europe? We're borrowing money to provide HIV meds to a bunch of people in sub Saharan Africa? Why the fuck are we doing these things? What's the benefit to us? And meanwhile, China is eating our lunch.
So you got to give me some time here to address the 72 points. All right, that you made. Let me
No,
begin.
no, it's all yours now. I wanted to just do it in one blast because it's one. I have to emphasize is that A, Trump is not crazy. B, from what I can tell, this is a coherent strategy. Now, do I agree with it? That's a separate story. Do I think it's morally the right thing to do? Absolutely not. But the definition of realpolitik, which was applied to Otto Bismarck and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, doesn't have shit to do with morality and values. It has to do with strategic expedience and advantage on the global stage.
Okay, now you have to shut up. Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Let me try to hit a few easy points. Okay,
Mhm.
and then I'll get into my main argument. That is the opposite of yours.
Yeah,
Uh,
please, please.
yeah.
It's all yours now.
So first of all, Zelensky shows up without a suit and tie, right? In army fatigues because he's showing solidarity with his soldiers, just like Churchill did, in World War II. Why then does Musk get a free pass doing that? So no, don't answer that. I'm just throwing it out there. That Trump doesn't get upset when Musk does it. Why would he get upset when Zelensky does it? I see that as hypocritical. Okay, number
Yeah,
one.
can I make one comment though, Vince? You're going to go through a laundry list of your point of view on this, and it's all based on values and morality. And I just went through a 10-minute harangue telling you that Trump doesn't give a shit about that. That the strategy that he's laying out and his entire approach is amoral. So if you could respond to my points outside the context of this kind of value judgment and focus on strategic result and expedience. how is Zelensky better or worse off now than he was before the meeting? What in my points made no strategic sense or could backfire on the United States? You see what I mean? You can go through your list, and I'm going to agree with you on every point. Zelensky, I told you, is a hero. Okay, and he's representing his people, and Musk is ASD douchebag shitting all over everything, but that's his own personal brand. So how do these actions and all the things that you're criticizing impact the United States negatively in a strategic sense?
All right.
Is that fair? Because we're in agreement. You're going to go through a long list of everything wrong with the situation, and
No, 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 no. I'm not.
as a Democrat, I'm going to agree with you.
No, no, no,
But
no. I'm not actually.
yeah,
In fact, you and I agree on what you started out saying. America has lost its edge, right? Okay. I
yeah,
agree. I agree with you on everything you just said.
okay,
Okay. Um, and I understand that I don't disagree with the surface strategy, as you put it, and the appearance of what Trump is doing. All right. What I disagree with is your presumption that Trump really does want to make America great again. All right. I don't think he gives a shit about America. I think that Trump only cares about one thing: Trump. All right. So I think everything he's doing, all right, is the sole purpose of it is personal enrichment. That's what I believe is at work here. Make America great again is the magician's distraction, okay, to blind us to the fact of what he's actually doing. All right, he could give a shit about America. He could give a shit about the people who voted for him. Basically, he's interested in personal enrichment. Okay, now how does that manifest? Well, the most obvious case is I want to make Gaza the Riviera of the Middle East and I'm going to own it. Okay? I'm going to have hotels there and everything else. All right? That doesn't make America great again. All right? That really shows, it absolutely pulls the curtain back, and the curtain's pretty sheer, in my opinion. It pulls the curtain back on exactly what he does. My thing is that, you say Trump really knows what he's doing and all that. I'll stipulate that. I just don't think it's about making America great again. He's transactional. All right. I've said before to you, he's a sociopath, among other, issues. Sociopaths don't give a shit. They have no empathy. They have no use for ideology or anything like that. Everything in their life is transactional. All right. I'm only going to do something if I get something back. All right. So, what does he have to do for personal enrichment? All right. Basically, he says, okay, you know what? Make America great again. Let me assemble this clown car of ideologues. All right. And say to them, yeah, your point is my point. Let's make America great again. Let's get, the bloat out of the government, blah, blah, blah. Right. That's what he's giving. Okay. Transactionally, what they give back to him is complete loyalty. All right. At the expense of people, of Americans. All right. So Trump is exploiting this situation by telling people what they want to hear. Okay. He tells his cabinet, you're right, Project 2025, let's do it. They're about ideology. Okay. As far as Musk goes, all right, that's the reason that Musk has signed on to this personal enrichment. I also think that he's a sociopath. He's got what, 400 contracts with the federal government or whatever. It's like an amazing conflict of interest on steroids. All right. Musk doesn't care about the fucking federal government. He doesn't care about bloat. He doesn't care about any of that. Personal enrichment. All right? That's what he's about. So, even though I probably have 20 minutes more to equal your time frame in your speech, let me say that while I could stipulate everything you said is right, okay, and you're right, we basically do agree, on the what you call it, the morality of it or whatever. Um, but where you and I disagree fundamentally is what Trump says is not what he believes. The underlying motivation for Trump, you think, is making America great again, and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. You think it's this ideological shit. All right, let's get out of pointless wars. He could give a crap about that. Your presumption, the foundation of your point of view, in my opinion, is based on a surface view of what he says and believing it and thinking that's what's motivating him. Whereas, in my opinion, everything he's doing is really just a show for MAGA. It's a show for his cabinet. It's a show for anyone he wants something, from. And I think personal enrichment is really what he's driving at. So that's the basic disagreement that I see between you and me, is that I think the foundation uh, of his actions, his strategy, okay, isn't about make America great or any of that stuff, the war, whatever. I think it's about him. So that's why I don't agree with uh, the idea that his actions represent anything to do with making America great again. That's the password that he uses to break into the minds, all right, of everyone else. So I'll stop now.
All right. I don't necessarily disagree with you about that either. My only caveat to that is it's not a zero sum game and it's not mutually exclusive. So I've already admitted that he's a narcissist, hustler, con man. We both know him from New York. But that doesn't mean that there necessarily isn't a belief in America, nor does it imply that the Trump doctrine, as I espoused it or tried to outline it, isn't also true, because everything from Gaza to fist pumping Vlad could be construed differently if you take an ad hoc opportunistic approach to it. There's method to the madness along the lines that I've described, and it's proven by, now I can't look into Trump's head or heart, and you're making an awful lot of assertions as to what he truly believes. Let's for a second just black box Trump. Let's forget about his motivations and let's look at things entirely behaviorally devoid of intent. For the
Let me
sake
say that.
for, for the sake of for the sake
Let me say that you're making a lot of assumptions as well.
Fine, but my assumption right now is strategic, which is let's black box Trump and not even worry about his motivation. Let's, in a sense, pretend you're 100% correct, that he's just a bloviating, narcissistic windbag who cares only about his bottom line, devoid of any strategic thinking whatsoever.
No, no, no,
Assume
no.
that's let's just assume that's true, or that he's doing everything, to your point, just to line his pockets.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Let's say that that's true. Let's look at the immediate impact of that Oval Office shit show. Now, what happened when Zelensky got physically kicked out of the Oval Office? The black SUV came by, picked his ass up. The Ukrainian delegation left before they had their nice lunch of rosemary chicken and creme brulee.
But they
Right?
made a big deal about that too.
They did, didn't they? And then there's selfies of all of Trump's douchey cabinet, without the Ukrainian delegation, like literally eating their food. All right. So Zelensky goes back. He gets on Fox News and he says there's no reason I should apologize, but the deal can still go through if Trump wants it. Trump responds on Truth Social by saying basically, fuck you. When you're ready to talk, come back and maybe I'll have you. But
Yeah.
what happened? What happened? Starmer went back to Europe and the entire EU and NATO went on red alert. It was fucking DEFCON 1 from the bureaucracy's point of view. The Europeans met in an emergency session, and the syllabus of that meeting was essentially, what are we going to do if we no longer have America? And what happened out of that was they stepped up for the first time, and I think that this is categorically a factually correct statement.
And I agree. I agree with you.
For the first time since World War II, okay, America kicked ass in Europe again, right? The Lend-Lease of Russia, the rebuilding of Germany was flattened. My father was a displaced person, Hungarian, after World War II. He survived the Holocaust and he went from city to city in Germany. And they played a game. The first person to find an intact brick won the contest. Germany was
Wow.
flattened, leveled, all right, as was huge swaths of Europe,
Hey, I
including
read Slaughterhouse Five.
all of Russia, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, so we rebuilt Europe, and we've been big brother to Europe. But for the first time since the end of World War II, Europe not only blew smoke up our ass that they'll increase their defense spending, that they'll come to their own defense, and in this case, come to and offer security guarantees to one of their own brethren, one of their own neighbors in need. For the first time ever, that's happened. So you allege that Trump has all of these selfish, greedy, avaricious, bottom line, I'm going to steal everything I can motivations. But even if that's all true, the actions that were precipitated from him unloading on Zelensky in the office and blowing up the US Ukrainian relationship immediately precipitated the EU for the first time in its fucking history to pony up more money for their own defense and make security guarantees to one of their own neighbors. So back to my Trump doctrine. Check. EU, NATO, check. Throw Ukraine under the bus. The EU and NATO will step up. Mission accomplished.
That's the transaction. All right. Trump gets to line his pockets, and what do people want from him? They want, all right, America first. All right. That's what they want. I'm saying he wants Trump first. All right. In order to get Trump first, what does he have to do? What's the transaction? He has to make people think, and I agree with you. All the outcomes of that are absolutely true. Yeah, Europe ponied up and all that
But
stuff.
but
But that's
stop
the wait, wait,
with
wait, wait.
stop
That's the
with
let me
this
finish. Let
Trump
me finish.
business. Go ahead.
Let
But
me finish.
all right, all
That's the
right, all right, all right.
transaction. That's the transaction. I give you this if you give me that. You have ideology, I'll give you your ideology, but I got to get something out of it personally. All right. So, a couple of things. All right. I agree with you on the the strategic outcome of everything he did, but I say that's the exchange. He's doing that for other people. He's not doing that for himself. He's doing that for Hegseth, and he's doing that for MAGA, and he's doing that for the Proud Boys. All right. And what do they give back to him? They give back loyalty, they get fealty, etc. And they accrue to his power So that's what he gets back out of it.
I'm befuddled by this, Vince, to be honest with you, because he is a cult leader. And what's the number one characteristic of the cult leader? The cult leader says up is down and down is up, the sky is purple, and my ass smells like roses. And the cult nods their head and smiles and goes, "Yes, dear leader. The sky is purple and down is up and up is down, and your ass smells like roses." It doesn't fucking matter. So I'm confused by simultaneously you're asserting that Trump is entirely transactional, devoid of any real strategy outside of his own avarice.
No, it's ideology,
And
not
yet
strategy.
what he's doing seems to, at least at the moment, be working in terms of our allies finally being able and willing to engender their own security. We have been borrowing hundreds of billions of dollars, largely from fucking China, to keep the Europeans safe against who? Against the Russians. So if he could do an end run and fist pump Vladimir and renormalize relations with Russia, it makes the entire existence of NATO a moot point, at least vis-a-vis the United States. And screw Ukraine. I'm not saying that this is the right thing to do, but I think that this goes well beyond Trump's own personal self interest. It is a strategy. And I see it as coherent and I see it as accomplishing its immediate goals, which goes back to the dynamics within the Oval Office. You see it as boorish narcissism and a disgrace of the office. And I see almost like a reborn, it's almost like Teddy Roosevelt gets genetically combined with Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was this kind of president, which is he understood that America had weaknesses. And he had a lot of compensatory behavior to rectify the American problem that he saw was encroaching. He was the first to have détente with China. He knew that the Vietnam War was a clusterfuck, and he was also amoral and willing to do a lot of this realpolitik kind of stuff. So I don't like Trump, but what I'm seeing is a president who, for the first time since World War II, is shaking shit up in a way that has a coherent trajectory toward maximizing our self interest.
Okay, so let me clarify a couple of things. You said that my point is that Trump is all about lining his pockets and everything.
Yeah,
Okay,
you said
my,
that.
I did say it. I did
Mm-hmm.
say it.
Mm-hmm.
However, I didn't quite put it that way. All right. That is a Trump strategy. How do I amass power and individual power and wealth? Okay? You're saying that his strategy is working, okay, to affect all of the things that America lost its edge with, okay? If I've captured that correctly.
Yeah.
I think I think that the strategy you're referring to is a meta strategy. I think that strategy is really I am I want power and self-enrichment. That's my strategy. How do I go about it? Ah, I create this kind of new world order and everything, and in turn, I get richer.
But
So,
why? But what, Vince, you're begging the question as to why this would be more advantageous to Trump's bottom line than to play it differently. You know, I'm a big fan of the multiverse where everything plays itself out. So why is this approach that is happening and unfolding before our very eyes, headline to headline, happening? You're alleging, if I got you right, that he has thought it through, at least to the extent that alienating Europe and NATO and fist pumping with Vladimir is the best way for him to line his pockets.
no,
And
it's the
I and
best way. It's the best way to put on a show so he can line his pockets.
why? Why is that the case? I mean, look, Trump has flip-flopped on significant issues. For example, uh, TikTok. He was anti-China, China, China until a major investor in TikTok, buddied with him at Mar-a-Lago, and all of a sudden his TikTok opinion changed. Well, guess what? All of his minions, because he's a cult leader, had no problem with that. A lot of his policies and a lot of his approaches to TikTok, to the world at large, is contingent on nothing else than him having these opinions for his minions.
All right,
So
let me.
everything
Okay,
from the anti-trans stuff to all of this shit, if Trump farts, then his minions sniff it and love it. So please explain to me why, of all possible universes, the universe we're in right now is the one that's most expeditious to lining Trump's pockets. I don't understand why this would be the case. Doesn't
uh,
he want to build Trump Hotel in Paris? Doesn't he want to, fist pump with whomever? Why does it have to be this orientation that just so happens to perfectly align with the strategy that I outlined in my rant from 10 minutes ago?
okay. So a couple of things. All right. How does this all add up to Trump lining his pockets? Trump Gaza. You can't tell me that that has anything to do with making America great again. I think he pulled the curtain back, right? He shot someone on Fifth Avenue, all right, and isn't even lying about it anymore
Yeah,
or masking it.
can I
No, no, no.
bloviate for a minute on
I gotta say
Gaza?
something.
On Gaza.
I feel like I'm not getting equal time here.
All right, all right. I'll let you go, but I do want to put a pin in Gaza because I completely disagree with you there too. And there's a big Middle East strategy that we could talk about and should talk about. So go ahead. I'll put a pin in it and I'll let you go, and then you tell me when I get go code.
Right. So Trump Gaza. All right. He doesn't give a shit about the Middle East. He doesn't give a shit about the Palestinians. All right. He loves Netanyahu. I'm gonna basically take away your Palestinian, your Hamas problem. In return, you let me build hotels and own the Riviera of the Middle East. Okay? Now, why does he do all the things that he does? Because he needs to get elected president because it gives him greater leverage to have the power to make more money for himself. So all of the things he's doing is the transaction. All right. He gives MAGAs what they want to hear. America first, trans people suck, the vermin from Mexico are stealing our jobs. He feeds that to him, and in exchange, all right, he doesn't give a shit. In exchange, they give him the presidency. They give him the power, a greater power, to line his pockets. Okay. Now, well, you know what? I'll stop. Go ahead.
um, once again, I get it. He's avaricious. He's transactional. He's a greedy motherfucker. I'm with you. But as I mentioned before, that it's not a zero sum game, nor is it mutually exclusive. With having a coherent strategy. So
I agree
let
with you. I agree
let
that
let
it's not
let's
mutually exclusive.
yeah
I
let's
agree with
look
that.
at let's look at Gaza. Okay, now yeah, this illustrates that. Sure, he would love to build Trump hotel casinos in Gaza, right? Sure, wouldn't that be phenomenal? But basically, what he did was he pulled a plug on the two-state solution. And that was a bold, highly strategic statement. For 70, 80 years since the creation of Israel, since, the creation of Israel essentially exiled 700,000 Palestinians from their homes. This is documented truth. The Palestinians call this the Nakba. So this is their Holocaust. Now, we can go on and on about the history, but from the Palestinian point of view, 750,000 people were forcibly removed from their homes, for the creation of the state of Israel. Nobody doubts this. That just happened. So they wound up in two places, and along the Gaza Strip in the southwestern part of the country, flush with the Sinai Peninsula, and then they ended up on the west bank of the Jordan. Okay, and then they created two bodies led by the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Hamas more recently in Gaza. Now, it's been an endless war of attrition. The Palestinians do not want to settle for 22% of the land. So, it's from the river to the sea. They're Islamist ideologues, especially Hamas. They want to eradicate Israel. And Israel considered it, to a large extent, an existential threat for a two-state solution to happen, because what happens when the Palestinians get a state? They get an army. And the country is so small, all of Israel, 100% of the land, inclusive of Gaza and the West Bank, are the size of New Jersey. So you have a country the size of New Jersey with about equal population of Jew and Arab delineated in this fragmented, crazy way. And frankly, Netanyahu and especially the right-wing government are like, no way, Jose, two-state solution, never going to happen. Now, the U.S. government, oscillating between Democrat and Republican president from decade to decade, has tried to play ball with this. They have tried to negotiate peace between the Israelis and the Arabs in Israel. Camp David, Jimmy Carter, every president had their mitts in this, and they all failed. And why did
Where are
they
you going
fail?
with this? Where are you going with this?
Trump has a Israeli strategy,
Yeah,
and
it's
he
transactional.
made
It's
no.
transactional.
It's not, can you? Well, let me finish. It's my turn. When Trump was president first term, he established the Abrahamic Accords between Israel, Saudi Arabia, United Emirates, and Bahrain. And what Trump did was he broke from 70 years, 7 decades of Democrat Republic tradition by marginalizing the Palestinians. Do you see a pattern here? He recognized that the main powers at the table were Israel, the number one military power in the region and our tight ally, and Saudi Arabia, the number two oil producer, number three oil producer. So here's what he decided, which is really an early expression of the Trump doctrine that I've been talking about. Fuck the little guys. I'm going to work with the big guys to America's benefit. For
To
the
his
first,
benefit. And to his benefit.
please stop with this. His benefit. I'm trying to show you that it's advantageous to the United States.
It might be.
So but it's irrelevant if it is or isn't to his benefit if the Trump doctrine is advantageous to the states, at least in principle. You're looking for a modus operandi which is personal, and I'm broadening this to show that there's a macro strategy that has significant impact. And the impact that it had in his first administration is to forge the Abrahamic Accords between Israel and these countries. It never happened before. And he did so by marginalizing the Palestinians. He got together with Kirshner, his son in law, and they decided this. Instead of trying to keep everybody happy and in the process pissing everyone off, they decided to go with the Sunni side of the Arab street. They forged an alliance between Israel and the Sunni Arab nations, namely these three, and fuck everybody else. Fuck Iran and fuck the Palestinians. And they managed to do it. They succeeded in doing it. And as part of that deal, Saudi Arabia is going to get a nuclear reactor from us. They're going to get nuclear weapons from us implicitly as a hedge against Iran. So how does this factor into plowing Gaza under and creating the French Riviera? See, I'm tying the bow on that. You can say that it's just for Trump to line his pockets with the hotels. That's the bonus that Trump gets out of this. But strategically, everyone from Mike Huckabee, who's our ambassador right now, who said out loud that annexing the West Bank is A-OK, to Netanyahu, the right-wing government, and frankly, a lot of Israelis who will sigh, a sigh of relief that the two-state solution is no longer on the table. that it's a air quote solution to the Palestinian problem. Now, is it unbelievably radical and unacceptable, exiling an entire nation, right? Of course it is. But it's reflective of the exact same strategy. He's throwing the Palestinians under the bus, he's throwing Ukraine under the bus. And in exchange for these sacrifices, he is alliancing the United States with big powers in an unequivocal sense to chop up the spoils and create global stability between the world's major superpowers. That is a strategy. It worked his first term. Israel has an alliance with Arab nations. There are Israelis who are on vacation in Riyadh right now. That was absolutely inconceivable before this deal. And it's the exact same approach that he's applying now to Ukraine and the Europeans, which is if you're a big guy, you sit with me at the table. If you're a secondary or tertiary country, fuck you. You don't have the power. And I'm going to feed you to my frenemies in exchange, transactional for benefits that I could get from the United States.
Yeah, but his followers don't vote for that. If followers vote because he feeds them all of this bullshit, okay?
What
That's
bullshit?
no. Let me it's my
Yeah.
turn now, right?
All right, go for
He
it. Go
feeds
for
them
it.
all of this stuff like, you know, Mexico is invading our country, Canada is invading our country. He basically
Mexico
throw
was. I mean, in
let
terms
me
of the
finish.
immigration.
Let me finish.
All right, go ahead.
He's demonizing an entire country, an entire race of people, because that's what everyone thinks, all right, will make America great again. All right. So basically, take a look. Let me change the example. Okay. Do you remember a Saturday Night Live skit a long time ago with Steve Martin? He used to play Theodoric of Yorick, the medicinal barber or whatever. And
Yeah, I'm laughing just thinking about it. It was very funny.
okay, so every solution he had was putting leeches on it. Okay, or I'm gonna cut. I have a bruise on my arm. Okay, well, let's cut the arm off. All right, or a guy's resting his arm, you know, on his leg, and he says, my leg has a big bruise on it. So Steve Martin's Theodoric says, well, we're going to have to cut off the leg and we're going to have to cut off the arm too. And why is that? Because it's resting on the leg. Now, my whole point in this metaphor or this fable or whatever is let's turn our attention to the problems that you are saying exist, okay? And let's say I'm going to consider it done in terms of our debate between the motivations there. And I agree with you that they're not mutually exclusive. Your points and my points are capable of existing at the same time. All right. Um, let's say that, okay, Mexico is, as you just said, yeah, they're invading. They're sending over drugs. They're sending over criminals, whatever the case. Trump is Theodoric of Yorick. Okay. Yeah, he's identified a problem. All right. His solution is to cut off the arm. His solution, he actually suggested once about bombing Mexico. All right. It's one thing, all right, to stir up everybody about a problem that really exists. It's another thing about how you solve that problem. Okay. Let's take a look at America, making America great again. We've been talking about making America great again on a world stage, on a global stage, I want to say. Let's take a look at our country. All right. Sure, the federal government is bloated. We all agree with that. Okay. Sure, we could save a lot of money. All right. And really, really bring down that deficit or whatever he's promising to do. Right. We could do all that stuff. Okay. The way he's going about it doesn't make America great again. All right. Basically, is it relevant? You said something about it. Well, it's irrelevant. It's not relevant to the federal workers that are being laid off. It's not. It is relevant to the MAGA voters and everybody else to get their Medicaid taken away. All right, it's very relevant. So this ideological thing about we're going to cut bloat in government, all right, okay, that's a very valid point and objective. The way he's going about it doesn't make America great again. It impoverishes America. Okay, it brutalizes its citizens. All right, it basically says, I'm going to solve everybody. I'm going to solve every problem by taking a chainsaw not only to the leg but also to the arm. So my point is, when you look inside the country versus outside the country, I think everything he's doing doesn't make America great again. I think he's betrayed the very people that voted for him. I think that he has taken this chainsaw, all right, and basically he says it's about reducing bloat in government, all right, but the way he's going about it doesn't make America great again. Your turn.
Okay. Okay. Uh, I agree with you. Stylistically, it's horrendous. If I'd be his PR guy, right, like White House PR guy, you and I work in PR.
Yeah,
We understand how this stuff, messaging, branding, all
absolutely.
that, all that stuff. So I'm completely in agreement with you. But when a revolution happens, whether it's Robespierre, how do you pronounce it? Robespierre.
Robespierre. You had it right. Yeah.
Robespierre. The heads are gonna roll. Now, was that an effective way of bringing about the end of aristocracy in France? Well, it precipitated Napoleon. So I think what you're intimating is also something that I agree with. When you take a radical approach to a revolution, you're going to have a whiplash to the whiplash, a backlash to the backlash. And I agree with you. And Carville, the Democratic strategist, wrote an op-ed in the New York Times recently that the only way to really stop Trump is for Trump to stop himself. So that when the Musk chainsaw cuts off the arm, the leg, the torso, and the head of the federal bureaucracy, and
And the American people.
millions, yeah, millions of, and it trickles down to the American people, and millions of Trump voters lose their benefits. Where did Trump have his strongest base? If you could look up a map, ask ChatGPT to do this. It'll do this for you with current data too, or Claude, or any of the new AI programs. Ask it to create a dynamic map of the United States where it superimposes Trump support, the red states, the red districts, with government handouts. All right. And then it'll be revealing where, the strongest areas of Trump support are the areas that are most dependent on the federal government for handouts.
I
So
agree with you
so who
100%.
so who's gonna be impacted? And I, again, this is the area of our dialogue here where we're both in violent agreement with each other downstream, which is when you take these radical moves, the people ultimately who will suffer the most are Trump's own constituents. And people in general have this wonderful way of voting against their best interests. I just went off on the Trump doctrine in the Middle East. How about all those Muslim Democrats in Dearborn, Michigan, who flipped from Biden Harris Waltz to Trump JD because they were so pissed off at how Biden handled the Gaza war? And it was self-evident based on the Muslim ban and everything that I've been talking about, the Abrahamic Accords, that Trump is unilaterally, unconditionally super pro-Israel to the point of wanting to exile the Palestinians and end the two-state solution forever. And these people ended up voting for him. It's the same for poor rural America, where the people who are going to be impacted the most by Doge are Trump's own voters. So I agree with you 100%. And that is going to be the reckoning of Doge. That's something that that's a can that they can't indefinitely kick down the road. The billionaires aren't going to struggle with these cuts. They don't give a fuck. It's not going to. They don't care about the price of eggs or a gallon of milk, right? It's the regular folks, and many of the regular folks are Trump's own base. So I agree with you regarding Mexico and all that, demonizing Mexicans, the Canadians being the 51st state, booyah. That can backfire too, but you have to admit though that the southern border was an absolute disaster, and it's Biden's fault. He reacted to Trump's lockdown of that border by basically opening it up in a way that sent in an extra 10 million people. The asylum policy, which is now shut down, was ridiculous. And the Democrats, Biden, shot themselves in the foot with the creation of inflation, with all of those COVID bailouts, which is trillions of dollars for no reason, almost after the pandemic was already over, opening up the border in a way that just created the chaos that ensued, that played into Trump's return to power. So let's point the finger not only at Trump and his excesses, but the failure of the Biden administration to really keep any of the real promises that made, and even the infrastructure spending of trillions of dollars. Trump fought against that, and Biden was characterized as the new FDR. Remember that? All the infrastructure, billions going to broadband across the US and bridge building. Where are the fucking bridges? And they've already spent something like $10 billion on the broadband expansion, and there's not a new router on a farm anywhere in the fucking US of A. Complete bureaucratic failure. So Trump isn't just making this shit up. He's riding off the fumes of Biden's farts. And the Democrats fucked it up in so many ways that Trump took advantage. Now, I do agree with you that Trump has his own excesses and he's going to have hell to pay when the impact of all of these radical revolutionary changes are going to impact Americans' everyday lives. But that said, I still think that he knows what he's doing internationally. And who knows? Who knows? The whole intent, if you listen to Besant, the new federal guy, right? The,
Right.
the the economist who talks like he has ASD. all of Trump's people are either douchebags like Hedgeseth, or they're Aspergery autistic people like Besson or fucking Musk. Did you
Or
notice
both.
that?
Or
They're
both.
they're 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 douchebag ASD people.
Well, thank you for acknowledging. Thank you for acknowledging, because the Biden thing, I was like, "Where's he going with this?" You're right. There are ways to fuck up, okay? And the Theodoric of York is what I'm calling Trump's fuck up. Okay, yeah, he's trying to solve a problem. He's just not doing it in the right way. It's not humane. It's not effective. It doesn't make America great again. Now, if you'll indulge me for a second, I want to ask you a question about something that you and I said in our text exchange. Would that be all right?
Yeah, yeah. Just don't
Okay.
talk about don't talk about the dick pics that we shared back and forth.
Wow, you
just
went
just
there,
kidding.
huh?
Just
You
kidding, folks.
you
This is the Mookie Spitz podcast. So there you go.
you went there, and
Yeah.
I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Okay, okay. Uh, you said, and this does relate to what we're talking about. Um, we were going back and forth last night. Actually, we were texting like demons on cocaine. Okay, uh, boom, boom, boom. We kept, it was like this, like ping pong. Um, at one point, you talked about the Oval Office. We were talking about the debacle that happened in the office, and you said in all caps at one point, Trump won. Okay, so the question I want to ask you is, what did he win?
Sure. Trump won the following. He signaled to Vladimir Putin, autocrat of Russia, an individual who invaded another country without provocation, who has led to the death of hundreds of thousands of people, who has kidnapped tens of thousands of Ukrainian children stolen from their parents to be indoctrinated in Russia. Vladimir Putin, he has signaled to Vladimir Putin that, hey, Vlad, it's you and me, baby. I'm on your side, bro. That's number one. Number
How
two,
is that winning though? What did he win?
well, I'm almost. I let me speak. Then you
You're
speak.
going there. You're going there.
Okay, all
Okay.
right. So he has hinted. He has hinted in no uncertain terms that him and Vlad are broskies. Number one. Number two, he has freaked the hell out of the Europeans to the point where, as I was intimating before, for the first time since World War II, they are stepping up for their own security and the security of their neighbors. That's number two. He has implicitly signaled to the other leaders of the world whom he either wants to do détente with or buddy up with, namely Netanyahu in Israel, MBS in Saudi Arabia, and Xi in China, that this is how I'm playing ball. I'm throwing Ukraine under the bus. I'm now I'm now in bed with the big boys here, and what's coming is probably war with Iran. We're going to have to figure out this Taiwan thing. He just did a chip deal with the Taiwan to kind of throw them a safety line.
Uh-huh.
Because if the Taiwanese invest heavily in the states, then he's sending a message to Xi. Based, no accident there. I'm throwing Ukraine under the bus, but don't invade Taiwan, at least not yet. And he's signaling the beginning of the initiation of the Trump doctrine for the second administration and moving forward. And all of these, for all the reasons that I've been laying out, are part of the broader plan of making America great again on the world stage. And all these things, like a domino effect, are, I think, are happening. So that's my answer to you. Now, do I agree with this? That's a whole separate story. And to
And
your point about ethics, about morality, about it becoming potentially self-destructive longer term, that's another story. But
yeah.
I'm answering your question. That's
Well,
why I
let
think
me
Trump won.
let me play it back so that and you can correct me or
Yeah, yeah,
say or
yeah,
confirm.
yeah.
So what Trump won is uh it's basically you're saying he won uh the hearts and minds, so to speak. If and again, I'm going to stop and let you correct me or whatever. He won the hearts and minds of Putin, of Netanyahu, or whatever. He won their hearts and minds because that's part of the Trump doctrine. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's part of it is, hey guys, we're in the same club together. Ukraine, the Palestinians, they're under the bus, and we're gonna chop up the world between us.
Okay, so here's the. Thank you. So that was a great answer. Um, Not that you need my endorsement. All right. So all the pundits that I've read so far, and you're right, I tend not to read right wing news, but all the pundits I said right now is that the big winner in all of this, that stem from the Oval Office is Putin. Okay, because basically Trump has allowed Putin, all right, to be in the driver's seat of a lot of shit. All right. Okay. America's not. Well, let me talk about the elephant in the room here. All right. About who won. The elephant in Donbass. All right. The rare earth minerals or whatever worth $1 trillion. All right. I think, well, you know it, right? That was Trump played that hand. Basically, he wants half of that. Give me half a billion or whatever the number he eventually agreed to. Give me half of that. Okay. So I'm moving around here because ultimately, I want to pull in $500 million. Now, who else wants that? Putin, right? I mean, on the one hand, Putin is motivated ideologically, I guess, by the manifest destiny of, let's restore the great Russia that used to exist before it was dismantled. But I think he has his eye on, the rare earth minerals or whatever we're calling them. More than that, who wants the minerals more than the United States or Russia, China. All right, their technology, all right, would skyrocket if they had access to all of that. So I think that who won? I don't know if Trump won so much as the people he's coddling up to won. What do you think?
Well, I've thought about and I've read opposing opinions that what Trump did was prior to the overall Oval Office blow up, a lot was riding on Russia kind of leading the show. That the US tightly allied with Ukraine would be air quote negotiating the terms of the ceasefire and eventual armistice. Because Ukraine is going to, let's just face facts. Ukraine is going to wind up like North and South Korea indefinitely. Russia is never going to cede a square kilometer of what they took in the Donbass, in Crimea, wherever. And Ukraine won't be allowed to enter NATO because that would be a tripwire really for World War III. So let's just face facts. That said, though, the U.S. and Ukraine allied uh, put a lot of the power in Russia to manipulate the situation and to kind of muscle in and out. The U.S. throwing a bomb in that whole situation, putting the Ukrainians on edge and then forcing them to ally more closely with the EU, frees up Trump and the U.S. as kind of this independent big brother player. And if they're fist pumping with Russia, then the entire dynamic has changed. It's basically ceding Ukraine to Russia along terms that everyone already understood as a given. Normally you would go into negotiations with everything on the table, but it's obvious and self-evident that Russia's not going to give up any land, and the only land that's really going to be negotiable at all is the Kursk region that Ukraine took at the end of last year, which is a little sliver of Russia that they invaded and now occupy. And they
Yeah.
did that for the sake of something to negotiate with. So what's going to happen is Ukraine is going to cede Kursk back to Russia. That's a given too. And then Russia might agree within the treaty we won't. Yeah, Putin will put into a piece of paper, yeah, I won't invade you. But per Zelensky's point in the fucking Oval Office, Putin's word is like toilet paper. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what he signs. So there are no agreements. The only security agreement that will hold for Ukraine is what's already being discussed. It's foreign boots on the ground. If you have tens of thousands of British and French, maybe even German troops, Polish troops in Ukraine, then those would act as kind of a tripwire to Russian aggression. Nothing else is going to work. So, long story longer, I don't think Trump ceded any real power to Russia. All of these terms are already stark naked with anyone with half a brain cell to see. And if nothing else, it just expedited the process. It put Ukraine into the arms of the EU, forcing the EU to step up, to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. And Trump will not put any US boots on the ground in Ukraine. That's a fucking given. So go fuck yourself, Vladimir Zelensky, for bringing up your security deal in the Oval Office when you should know better. It's just not going to happen, big guy.
So, um, if I can, we have a little time left. No, 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 no. I very well articulated. Hard to disagree with. Okay, um, and you are. I know you, and your followers know you. Okay, and your friends know you. You love to make predictions, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and you're very proud. You're very proud of a lot of them. And you know
Yeah, and
what?
even if I'm
Way,
totally dead ass
uh,
wrong, I just like
well,
doing it
well,
anyway.
that's the thing. I had a coach who said, "I'm going to end. I'm going to end with a
Mhm.
stupid one, but maybe it isn't that stupid. We'll see."
I do. I learned. I learned. Yeah. That's great. I love that. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. I think Trump is going to chill on his laurels until Zelensky resigns. Zelensky has already said that he would abdicate the throne to move the process forward. He mentioned this last week. He articulated this during an interview. So I think what's going to happen is Trump knows that he's quote unquote got all the cards, and I think that that's just categorically true. I think the Europeans and NATO are all shitting their pants. They don't want to be held holding 100% of these air quotes security, you know, guarantees. They really don't want tens of thousands of their own troops in harm's way in Ukraine with all of this riding on it. So my prediction is Zelensky will resign from office fairly soon, maybe within even a couple few weeks, and he will be replaced by someone new, someone who will be more sympathetic to being Trump's lapdog. And this new Zelensky will repeat the performance of what happened before. Trump will demand it. And he's going to sit in the Oval Office and take it like a man in front of all those cameras. The deal will go through with Ukraine. Ukraine will give Kursk back to Russia. Russia will keep Donbass and the Crimea. There will be an armistice in Ukraine. And the Europeans will put some troops. The U.S. is going to put a lot of their business interests in Ukraine to mine out some of those minerals and make some deals. And it'll be in this never land state for maybe a year or two. And if Putin is still kicking and he's still vibrant and his parts still work, then there's a high probability that he'll try to reinvade. What's the hurry? What is Trump's hurry? He's already going to cut all aid to Ukraine. He's not going to give Zelensky another penny. And then Russia has a timestamp. Ukraine is hurting, but Russia is hurting really bad. There was a news little brief that came out that Putin unloaded something like 4.5 tons of Russian gold. He converted into dollars. That was a little news blip that people ignored. But I see that as a sign of economic desperation. He's lost tons of guys. He's conscripting people from Siberia, North Korea. Yeah, North Koreans. I was just going to say the North Koreans are fighting. There's still several thousand dudes being wasted almost every day. It's a horrific World War I style war of attrition, a meat grinder, like everyone's saying, and it's really unsustainable for both Ukraine and Russia. So if anyone has any urgency here, and this again is to Trump's point, if you don't want to do it my way, then you go fight it out. Good luck with that. And Putin wants to end it, and so does Zelensky. And Zelensky knows, and the Ukrainians know, and this is the key point, once again, reinforcing Trump's point of view, they can't really do it without the United States. So Trump holding all the cards is like, fuck you. I'm just going to sit here and chill out. You guys figure it out until you're ready to play ball. And the contingency for playing ball is Zelensky resigning. And I think that's what the next step is. Trump's going to do nothing until Zelensky resigns. The Europeans are going to sigh with relief when that happens. They're going to send the toady to the Oval Office for the signing that should have happened on Friday. And then the wheels are going to start turning for an armistice with no real security guarantees. And then it's all contingent on Putin. No, please, please, and indulge. You can actually take a leak while we're recording. You can hit. You, yeah, that's what I would do. And who says I haven't done it? Who says I haven't done it already during the course of this? Absolutely, there's always going to be a bathroom involved in some way. Yeah, yeah, absolutely not. There's already been the meme of Trump massaging Musk's toes and Musk the real president and all this bullshit. So Trump, there's no way in hell that Trump will give Musk any time. Musk will no doubt be in attendance in some capacity, and they'll cut to him in his douchey ASD technical support T-shirt with the dark MAGA hat, right? But again, it's kind of like the Emperor and Darth Vader in Star Wars, right? Who has the real power? Who bows down to whom? So it's a marriage of convenience between two egomaniac narcissists. The big difference is that I believe that Musk, despite being emotionally 5 years old, is truly gifted in many, many, many ways. People fall into two camps with Musk. Either you think he's a transcendent genius who's worked out every step in another life, or you think he's a complete phony and fake like Trump. And like most people, I think Musk kind of falls in between. He's genius and bullshit artist, like the protagonist of my upcoming science fiction book, which I will not plug here. But that, but that said, I think Musk truly has his gifts, and we'll see how that shakes out. But Trump is clearly the boss, and their marriage of convenience and expedience and bromancing is delicate. He's not going to compromise even the remote inkling of an illusion that he's the puppet master. Okay, all right. I say hashtag bring it on. I think that's everyone sees that train wreck eventually coming, but here's one thing to think about though. They both need each other in key ways. To the point that you're making, Musk has like 400 contracts equaling tens of billions of dollars across his various companies, right? The U.S. military just bought like $400 million worth of cyber trucks. So, that's one of many Starlink satellites, SpaceX. It goes on and on and on and on. So, yeah, yeah, the conflict of interest, it almost makes conflict of interest a moot point. It's so broad and vast, right? But at the same time, Musk has liquidity. So if Trump gets pissed off at one of his minions, especially at the state level, Musk can have the motherfucker primaried again. He could launch a campaign, a local campaign where you flood the market with 10, 20, $30 million can make or break a candidate. So, Musk's power goes to the local level too, where he could reach in his pocket and he can get any problem that Trump has removed simply by throwing money at it. That's just something to think about. Oh, yeah, mutual assured destruction. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And who knows what they got on each other. But right now it's a marriage of convenience. It's an Emperor and Darth Vader kind of relationship. And the MAGA minions are going nuts. They love it, especially Musk being a convert, because only a few years ago he was all green and a libtard, and he saw the light. And like any kind of new recruit, he's got all the zeal of a convert, and the liberals are freaking out. They're selling their Teslas. They're sawing them in half and writing shit all over them. So it's a revolution not only in politics and culture, but the line is long of the Trump converts. Mark Andreessen, Mark Zuckerberg, Mookie Spitz, at least from a strategic point of view, where I see what Trump's doing in a way that I might have been dismissive of before. So, let's see how it plays out. You and I, let's get back on the pod a few months from now to see if our predictions ring true and see where we're at and see if our opinions have changed at all about whether this strategy is coherent, whether it's effective, and who's benefiting and who's losing. That's awesome. Thanks so much for making time, Vince. I hope the listeners had a blast kind of riding along our back and forth. And this has been the Bald and Bloviating podcast, and there's been a lot of baldness and a lot of bloviation. So, mazel tov to everyone on board. take, take care. Well, to be continued. Thank you.